The entire restaurant went silent, save for the sickening sound of a man gasping for air. At table 7, the man in the tattered coat clawed at his throat, his face turning a terrifying shade of violet. The wealthy patrons of Le Ciel didn't move. They simply stared, clutching their pearls and champagne flutes, disgusted by the dying man's struggle. "He's choking," someone whispered, but no one stood up. No one except Maya. She didn't see a beggar. She saw a life fading out. She didn't know that by saving this stranger, she was about to lose her job, her reputation, and her sanity. But she also didn't know that the man dying in her arms wasn't a homeless drifter. He was the most powerful man in New York City, and he never forgets a debt. Maya Linwood wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, careful not to smear the makeup that was mandatory for all floor staff at Le Ciel. The restaurant was the crown jewel of downtown Chicago, a place where a single appetizer cost more than Maya's weekly grocery budget. The air smelled of truffle oil, aged steak, and old money. "Table 4 needs a refill on the sparkling water, Maya. Move it!" snapped Rick, the floor manager. Rick was a man who wore suits, 2 sizes too small to emphasize muscles he didn't have. He had a way of looking at Maya that made her feel like a smudge on a pristine window. "On it, Rick," Maya said, keeping her head down. She couldn't afford to argue. Her mother's medical bills were piling up on the kitchen counter of her cramped apartment, threatening to bury them both. Every shift, every tip, every humiliating nod of obedience was necessary for survival. The dinner rush was in full swing. The clatter of silver against fine china created a rhythmic, chaotic music. Maya moved through the tables like a ghost, pouring wine, folding napkins, and smiling until her cheeks ached. Then the bell at the front door jingled. The hostess stand was empty for a moment, and a man walked in. He looked entirely out of place. He wore a heavy charcoal wool coat that had seen better days, the cuffs fraying at the edges. His hair was salt and pepper, slightly unkempt, and his boots were scuffed. He looked like a man who had walked a long way in the cold. Rick spotted him immediately. He descended on the man like a hawk. "Excuse me, sir." Rick said, his voice dripping with false politeness that barely masked his disdain. "Deliveries are around the back." The man looked up, his eyes, a piercing, unusual shade of grey. "I'm not a delivery driver. I'd like a table for one, just a quick dinner." "We are fully booked," Rick lied smoothly, stepping in front of the man to block his view of the half-empty dining room. "And we have a strict dress code. Jacket and tie required." The man sighed, a sound of bone-deep exhaustion. "I have money. I just want a hot meal." Maya, pausing near the service station with a pitcher of water, felt a pang of sympathy. It was 10 degrees below zero outside. "Rick," Maya whispered, stepping forward. "Table 9 is open. It's in the back corner. No one will see him. I can serve him quickly." Rick glared at her, his nostrils flaring. "You want to turn Le Ciel into a soup kitchen, Linwood. If he can't pay, it's coming out of your tips." "He said he can pay," Maya insisted quietly. Rick scoffed, but waved a dismissive hand. "Fine. Put him in the corner. If he disturbs anyone, even a cough, he's out, and you're written up." Maya nodded and guided the stranger to the small, secluded table near the kitchen doors. "Right this way, sir." The man looked at her, and for a second the weariness in his face lifted. "Thank you," he said. His voice was gravelly but cultured. "I'm Elias." "I'm Maya." She smiled, placing a menu down. "Can I get you something to warm up while you decide?" "Just water. And the beef stew if you have it." "The bœuf bourguignon." "Excellent choice." As the night wore on, Maya checked on Elias frequently. He ate with a quiet dignity, ignoring the sneering looks from the couple at the adjacent table. He seemed lost in thought, staring into the candle flame. It happened just as Maya was bringing the dessert cart to a group of investors at table 3. A sharp, wet sound cut through the ambient jazz music. Clatter. Maya spun around. In the back corner, Elias was standing up, clutching his throat. His chair had fallen backward. His face was contorted in panic, turning a deep shade of red. He couldn't breathe. Oh my God! A woman at table 8 gasped, then immediately turned away, covering her salad with her hand, as if poverty were contagious. Rick was at the POS terminal. He looked up, saw the commotion, and froze. He didn't run to help. He looked annoyed. Elias stumbled forward, his eyes bulging, pleading for help. He reached out toward a passing busboy who recoiled in fear. "Help him!" Maya screamed, abandoning the dessert cart. She sprinted across the dining room, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. Elias was swaying his knees, buckling. He was a large man, heavy and broad-shouldered, and he was going down. Maya caught him just as he collapsed. She grunted under his weight, spinning him around. She was small, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. She wrapped her arms around his diaphragm, making a fist. 1. She pulled back hard. Nothing. 2. Elias's weight was becoming dead weight. He was losing consciousness. 3. "Come on," she gritted out. Rick was shouting now, but not helpful instructions. "Get him out of here. He's dying in the dining room. Get him outside." Maya ignored him. She ignored the stares, the whispers, the lack of humanity surrounding her. She squeezed her eyes shut and gave one final desperate thrust under Elias's ribcage. A piece of unchewed steak dislodged from his windpipe and flew onto the floor. Elias gasped, a ragged, desperate intake of air that sounded like a saw cutting wood. He fell to his knees, coughing violently, his hands trembling as he braced himself on the floor. Maya dropped beside him, rubbing his back. "Breathe! Just breathe! You're okay! I've got you!" The dining room was dead silent. Elias looked up at her, tears of strain streaming down his face. He wheezed, gripping her hand with a strength that was shocking. "You!" he rasped. "You saved me." Before Maya could answer, Rick's polished shoes appeared in her line of sight. "Get him up!" Rick hissed, his voice low and furious. "The paramedics are on their way. Get him out the back door before he throws up on the carpet." The paramedics arrived minutes later, loading a still-dazed Elias onto a stretcher. His blood pressure had spiked dangerously high, and they wanted to take him in for observation. As they wheeled him out the back service entrance, he tried to turn his head to find Maya. "The girl," Elias mumbled through the oxygen mask. "Where is—" "The girl. Rest now, sir," the paramedic said, loading him into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut and the sirens wailed into the Chicago night. Maya stood by the alley door, shivering in her thin uniform. Her hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. She felt a strange mixture of pride and terror. She had saved a life. That had to count for something. She walked back into the kitchen, expecting perhaps a nod of acknowledgement, maybe even a good job from the kitchen staff. Instead, she found silence. The sous chefs were chopping vegetables with their heads down. The dishwasher wouldn't look at her. Rick was waiting in the small, cramped manager's office with the glass walls. He motioned for her to enter. Maya walked in. "Rick, Badge," Rick said. He didn't look up from his clipboard. Maya froze. "What? Give me your badge, Maya, and your apron." "I don't understand," Maya stammered. I just saved a man's life. He was choking." Rick finally looked up, and the coldness in his eyes sent a shiver down her spine. "You caused a scene, Maya. We operate at a level of excellence here. Le Ciel is a sanctuary for the elite. Tonight you turned it into a circus." He was dying. Maya's voice rose, cracking with emotion. What was I supposed to do? Let him die because it might disturb Mrs. Vanderwall's souffle. You touched a guest, Rick said, standing up and leaning over the desk. You screamed in the dining room, and worse, you brought that vagrant in here against my judgment. This is on you. That vagrant paid his bill, Maya shot back. He was a human being. He was a liability. Rick slammed his hand on the desk. And now so are you. You're fired. Effective immediately. Maya felt the floor drop out from under her. Rick, please. You know about my mum. The surgery is next week. I need this insurance. I need the tips. You should have thought about that before you decided to play superhero. Rick sneered. Get your things and get out. If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling security for trespassing. Maya stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a burning, hot anger. She ripped the name tag off her blouse and slammed it onto the desk. You're a monster, Rick, she whispered. I'm a manager, he replied coldly. Goodbye, Miss Linwood. Maya walked out of Le Ciel into the biting wind. The snow was falling harder now. She had no job, no reference, and $300 in her bank account. She walked to the bus stop, sat on the icy bench, and buried her face in her hands. She didn't know that 2 blocks away in the back of an ambulance, Elias Thorne was pulling the oxygen mask off his face. He grabbed the paramedic's arm. My phone. Give me my phone. Sir, you need to relax, the medic urged. Phone, Elias commanded, with a voice that suddenly held the weight of a boardroom titan. The medic handed him the device. Elias's fingers still trembling, slightly dialed a number. Edwards, a voice answered on the other end. It's Elias, he rasped. Mr. Thorne, we expected you at the board meeting. Where are you? Never mind that. Edwards, I need you to find someone. A waitress at Le Ciel. Her name is Maya. I don't care what it costs or what you have to do. Find out everything about her. Is everything all right, sir? Elias looked out the back window of the ambulance at the receding city lights. No, Edwards, but it's about to be. I found the one person in this city who doesn't care about my money, and I think she's in trouble. The next morning, the sun rose over Chicago, gleaming off the glass steel of the skyline, indifferent to the fact that Maya Linwood's life had fallen apart. Maya sat at her kitchen table, her head in her hands. Spread out before her were the classifieds, her phone, and an eviction notice that had been slid under her door 2 days ago. She had been banking on her shift pay and tips from Le Ciel to cover the rent. Now she had nothing. She had spent the last 4 hours calling every high-end restaurant in the city. The response was always the same. Linwood, Maya Linwood. Hold on. Ah, yes. We spoke to Rick at Le Ciel. He says you're volatile, unstable. We aren't hiring. Rick hadn't just fired her. He had blacklisted her. In the tight-knit world of Chicago's fine dining word, traveled fast. He had painted her as a hysteric who assaulted a guest. Maya's phone buzzed. It was the hospital. Miss Linwood? Dr. Evans' voice was gentle but heavy. It's about your mother, Elena. Her oxygen levels dropped last night. We've stabilized her, but we need to discuss the surgery again. The insurance company is pushing back on the coverage. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, a tear leaking out. I'll be there, Dr. Evans. I'll figure it out. Please just keep her comfortable. She hung up and threw the phone across the room. It bounced off the worn sofa cushion. She was trapped. Meanwhile, 40 stories above the city, in the penthouse office of Thorne Capital, the atmosphere was very different. Elias Thorne stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the ants scurrying on the pavement below. He was no longer the ragged man in the tattered coat. He was shaved sharp and wearing a bespoke navy suit that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. Elias was a legend in the financial world. They called him the Ghost because he rarely made public appearances, yet his invisible hand moved markets. He had been grieving the loss of his wife for 2 years, wandering the city in disguise, trying to feel something other than numbness. Last night, choking on a piece of beef in a restaurant full of people who wouldn't look him in the eye, he had finally felt something fear, and then gratitude. So he tattered. Edwards, his personal assistant and head of security, walked in, placing a thick manila folder on the obsidian desk. "You found her?" Elias asked, turning around. "Maya Linwood," Edwards said, tapping the folder. 24 years old. Worked at Le Ciel for 3 years. Impecunious background, but a spotless record until last night. She supports a sick mother, stage 4 COPD. They are drowning in debt, sir. Elias walked over and opened the file. He saw a picture of Maya, a candid shot taken from a security camera, looking tired but determined. "And the manager?" Elias asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Rick Salinger," Edwards replied with a distasteful curl of his lip. "A petty tyrant. We've confirmed he fired Miss Linwood immediately after the ambulance left. He cited gross misconduct to deny her severance and unemployment benefits. He's also been calling other venues to ensure she doesn't get hired." Elias stared at the photo of the girl who had bruised his ribs to save his life. He remembered the desperation in her voice when she told Rick she needed the job. He remembered the warmth of her hand on his back when he was gasping for air. "She saved my life, Edwards," Elias said softly. "And for that, she was destroyed. What are your orders, sir? Shall I write a check, pay off the mother's medical bills?" Elias closed the folder. A cold, dangerous light flickered in his grey eyes, the look he usually reserved for hostile takeovers. "No," Elias said. "A check is charity. Charity is for victims. Maya Linwood is not a victim. She's a fighter. I don't want to just help her survive. I want to help her win." He picked up his phone. "Get the car, Edwards, and call the legal department. I want to buy something." "Buy what, sir?" Elias smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "The building that houses Le Ciel." Maya was sitting in the hospital waiting room, staring at the scuffed linoleum floor when a shadow fell over her. She looked up to see a man in a black suit and sunglasses standing before her. He looked like a Secret Service agent. It was Edwards. "Miss Linwood?" Maya stiffened, clutching her purse. "Yes, who are you? If you're a debt collector, I am not a debt collector," Edwards said smoothly. "My employer would like a word with you. He believes he can assist with your current predicament." "I don't know your employer," Maya said, standing up warily, "and I'm not going anywhere with a stranger." "He's the man you had dinner with last night," Edwards said. Maya paused. "The homeless man, Elias." "Mr. Thorne is not homeless, and he is waiting outside." Curiosity warred with caution, but Maya had nothing left to lose. She followed Edwards out of the hospital entrance. A sleek, black Maybach limousine was idling at the curb. Passers-by were staring. Edwards opened the rear door. Maya slid inside. The interior smelled of expensive leather and cedar. Sitting on the other side was Elias. But it wasn't the Elias she knew. This man radiated power. He was grooming his cuffs, his posture impeccable. "Hello, Maya," he said. Maya's jaw dropped slightly. "Elias, you cleaned up." "I did," he said. "And you look like you haven't slept." "It's been a rough 24 hours, she said, her voice hardening. "I lost my job because of you. I appreciate the ride, but unless you're here to apologize, I need to get back to my mum." "I am here to apologize," Elias said earnestly. "I didn't intend for you to suffer for my moment of weakness. I know Rick fired you. I know he blacklisted you. and I know about your mother's bills." Maya bristled. "You investigated me. I protect my investments," Elias said, "and right now I am investing in you." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a check. He placed it on the leather console between them. Maya looked at it. It was made out to Chicago General Hospital. The amount was blank. "What is this?" she whispered. "That is for your mother's surgery and her recovery, and a private nurse for as long as she needs it," Elias said calmly. "Fill in the number. Any number." Maya stared at the check, her hands trembling. It was her freedom. It was her mother's life. She looked up at him, tears stinging her eyes. "Why? Because I did the Heimlich maneuver. Because you were the only person in that room who saw a human being instead of a nuisance," Elias said. "But there is a condition." Maya pulled her hand back. "I knew it. There's always a catch. What do you want? Is this some sort of arrangement?" Elias laughed, a deep, rich sound. "Not like that. I don't want your body, Maya. I want your anger." What? "Rick took your livelihood. He humiliated you. He abused his tiny amount of power to crush you." Elias leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I want to give you the chance to crush him back." Maya felt a cold heat in her chest. She thought of Rick's sneering face, the way he looked at her like she was trash. "How?" she asked. "I have acquired the property title for the building Le Ciel occupies," Elias explained. "The lease is up for renewal next week. Rick and the owners assume it's a formality. They are wrong." Elias picked up a document from the seat beside him. "I am going to buy the restaurant," Elias continued. "But I'm an investor, not a restaurateur. I need someone to run it. Someone who knows the floor, the kitchen, and the problems. Someone who will clean house." He extended the document to her. It was an employment contract. The title at the top read, "General Manager." The salary was 5 times what she made as a waitress. "You want me to take Rick's job?" Maya gasped. "No," Elias smiled. "I want you to be Rick's boss. I want you to walk in there, take the keys, and decide his fate. I want you to turn Le Ciel into the place it pretends to be." Maya looked at the contract, then at the check, then at Elias. "I've never managed a restaurant," she said weakly. "You managed a crisis while everyone else froze," Elias countered. "Skills can be taught. Character cannot. Do we have a deal, Maya?" Maya looked out the tinted window at the city that had chewed her up and spit her out. She thought of her mother lying in the hospital bed, worrying about money. She thought of Rick laughing as he kicked her out into the snow. She turned back to Elias, picked up the pen, and signed the contract. "When do I start?" she asked. Elias grinned. "Tonight. Put on your best dress. We're going to dinner." The transformation took 2 hours, but to Maya, it felt like shedding a skin. Elias had directed the driver to a boutique on the Magnificent Mile, a place with no price tags in the window, and a doorman who knew Elias by name. There Maya was fitted not for a ball gown, but for armor. She selected a tailored emerald green pantsuit that screamed authority, paired with stilettos sharp enough to puncture an ego. Her hair, usually pulled back in a messy service bun, was blown out into sleek, dark waves. When she stepped out of the dressing room, Elias was waiting, sipping an espresso. He looked up, and for a moment, the titan of industry was speechless. "You look dangerous," Elias said, a hint of approval in his voice. "I feel like an imposter," Maya admitted, smoothing the lapel of the jacket. 3 hours ago I was unemployed. Now I'm wearing a suit that costs more than my car. "Value is perceived, Maya," Elias said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "Rick sees value only in status. Tonight we are going to teach him that status can be bought, but class cannot. Are you ready?" Maya took a deep breath. She thought of her mother breathing easier in a private room thanks to Elias's check. She thought of the years of verbal abuse she had swallowed at Le Ciel. "I'm ready," she said. The black Maybach rolled up to the front entrance of Le Ciel at 8:00 p.m., the peak of the prime-time rush. The valet, a young man named Toby, who Maya had often shared a smoke break with, jogged over to open the door. When Elias stepped out, Toby didn't recognize him as the choking vagrant from the night before. He saw the suit, the watch, the aura of immense wealth. Then Maya stepped out. Toby's jaw dropped. Maya. "Hello, Toby," she smiled, handing him the keys to the limousine. "Keep it close, please." "Yes, Mom," Toby stammered, his eyes wide. Elias offered Maya his arm. "Shall we?" They walked up the red carpet. The heavy oak doors swung open. The noise of the restaurant washed over them, the clinking of crystal, the low hum of conversation, the smell of roasted duck and expensive perfume. Rick was at the hostess stand, berating a new hostess for seating a party of 3 at a table for 4. He looked up, his face set in its perpetual scowl, ready to dismiss whoever had just walked in without a reservation. His eyes landed on Elias first. He saw a wealthy patron. He put on his oily fake smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Le Ciel. Do we have a—" Then his eyes slid to the woman on Elias's arm. The smile died instantly. It was replaced by a look of confusion, then recognition, and finally blinding rage. "You," Rick spat, stepping around the podium. His face turned a mottled red. "You have some nerve showing your face here, Linwood." The conversation in the waiting area stopped. A few diners near the front turned their heads. "Good evening, Rick," Maya said. Her voice was steady, cooler than the winter wind outside. "We'd like a table, preferably near the window." "Is this a joke?" Rick laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You're trespassing, and you—" He turned his glare on Elias, squinting. "Wait, I know you. You're the bum, the one who choked last night." Rick looked between them, piecing it together with his own twisted logic. "I see." Rick sneered, his voice raising so the nearby guests could hear. "So the charity case found herself a sugar daddy. Did you pick him up at the homeless shelter? Maya? Did you clean him up just to come here and flaunt it?" Elias didn't blink. He looked at Rick with the boredom of a lion watching a buzzing fly. "I'd be careful with your tone, Mr. Salinger," Elias said softly. "I don't need to be careful with trash," Rick shouted, pointing at the door. "Get out, both of you, before I call the police and have you arrested for harassment and trespassing." "We aren't trespassing," Maya said, taking a step forward, forcing Rick to step back. "We're customers. We don't serve former employees who were fired for incompetence," Rick hissed. "And we definitely don't serve vagrants. Now get out." Rick signaled to the 2 security guards standing by the cloakroom. "Throw them out. Use force if you have to." The guards, large men who knew Maya and liked her, hesitated. "I said throw them out." Rick screamed, veins bulging in his neck. "Actually," a new voice cut through the tension. A man in a grey suit had quietly entered behind Maya and Elias. It was the current owner of Le Ciel, Mr. Sterling. He looked pale, sweating, profusely clutching a leather portfolio. "Mr. Sterling," Rick said, relieved. "Thank God you're here. Maya Linwood has returned with that homeless man who caused the scene last night. I was just having security remove them." Mr. Sterling didn't look at Rick. He looked at Elias, and he looked terrified. "Mr. Thorne Sterling," said, his voice trembling. I didn't expect you personally. My lawyers said the paperwork would be finalized tomorrow morning." Rick froze. He looked at his boss. "Thorne who is Thorne?" Elias finally smiled. It was a shark's smile. Change of plans, Sterling, Elias said smoothly. I decided I wanted to inspect my acquisition during service hours. I wanted to see how the management handles difficult guests. Rick's face went pale. Acquisition. Rick, Mr. Sterling said, his voice cracking. This is Elias Thorne, of Thorne Capital. He bought the building yesterday, and as of 10 minutes ago, he bought the restaurant. The silence that fell over the lobby was absolute. The waiters froze with trays in their hands. The hostess gasped. Rick looked at Elias, the man he had tried to kick out into the freezing cold, the man he had called a vagrant. Elias Thorne, the billionaire who owned half of downtown Chicago. Mr. Thorne. Rick stammered, his entire demeanor collapsing into pathetic subservience. I had no idea. Sir, if I had known it was you, the disguise, it was so effective. I was just trying to maintain standards. Standards, Elias repeated, tasting the word like sour wine. You kicked a dying man out the back door, Rick. You fired the only employee who had the courage to save him. Is that your standard? I was protecting the brand, Rick pleaded, wringing his hands. It was a misunderstanding. I can explain. I can fix this. You can't fix anything, Elias said dismissively, because I'm not the one you need to answer to. Elias turned to Maya. He gestured to the dining room with an open hand. I'm just the investor, Elias said, loud enough for the staff to hear. I don't run restaurants. I hire experts for that. He looked at Rick. Rick, meet the new owner's representative and your new direct supervisor. Rick turned to Maya. The color drained from his face completely. Hello, Rick, Maya said, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. Rick Salinger looked like a man who was watching a guillotine blade slowly rise. He looked at Maya, then at Mr. Sterling, who was busy staring at his shoes, refusing to make eye contact. You can't be serious, Rick whispered. She's a waitress. She doesn't know the first thing about P&L sheets inventory or labor costs. I know that you steal from the tip pool, Rick, Maya said. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Rick's eyes bulged. That's a lie. That's slander. Maya stepped closer, her voice calm and authoritative. I know you doctor the time clocks to avoid paying overtime. I know you charge guests for premium vodka and serve them the well rail. And I know you take a 15% cut of the valet cash tips every Friday night. The staff around the room began to murmur. The bartenders exchanged looks. They all knew it was true, but no one had ever dared to say it. Proof, Rick screeched. You have no proof. I have the books, Elias interjected, tapping the portfolio Mr. Sterling had brought. My auditors have been going over Luciel's finances since 9:00 a.m. this morning. It's a mess, Rick. Embezzlement, fraud, labor violations. Elias leaned in, close to Rick's face. I could send you to prison for 5 years, but Maya asked me not to. Rick let out a breath, a desperate hope kindling in his eyes. He turned to Maya, sweating. Maya, look, we have our differences. I was hard on you. I admit it. But I can change. I can help you run this place. You need someone with experience. We can be a team. Maya looked at him. For a second, she remembered how small he made her feel yesterday, how he looked at her like she was dirt. I don't need your help, Rick, she said, and I don't want you in prison. Thank you. Rick exhaled. Thank you, Maya. You won't regret. I don't want you in prison, she continued, cutting him off, because in prison you get a free meal, and I don't think you deserve one. She pointed to the front door. You're fired, Rick. Get your things. You have 5 minutes. If you're not gone, the security guards you tried to sick on us will escort you out. Rick stared at her. He looked around the room for an ally. He looked at the bartenders, the servers, The bus boys. Slowly the staff started to smile. The head chef, a large man named Marco, who had watched Rick bully waitresses for years, stepped out of the kitchen. He was holding a ladle, but he held it like a scepter. He gave Maya a firm nod. Rick realized he was alone. "You'll regret this." Rick spat his face, twisting into ugliness one last time. "This place will burn to the ground without me. You're nothing but a servant." He stormed toward the office to get his coat. "Leave the coat," Elias barked. Rick froze. "That coat belongs to Le Ciel," Elias said coolly. "You leave with what you came with, which, judging by your character, is absolutely nothing." Rick stripped off his blazer, threw it on the floor, and stormed out into the cold Chicago night in his shirt sleeves. The heavy door slammed shut behind him. For a second, there was silence. Then someone started clapping. It was Toby the valet who had snuck back inside. Then the hostess joined in. Then the bartenders. Then the diners, realizing they had just witnessed the most entertaining dinner theater of their lives, began to applaud. Maya stood in the center of the lobby, the applause washing over her. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She looked at Elias. He wasn't clapping. He was just watching her with a look of intense pride. "Well, boss," Elias said, his voice low, so only she could hear. "The floor is yours." Maya turned to the staff. She held up a hand, and the room quieted down. "Okay, everyone," she said, her voice trembling slightly before finding its strength. "Show's over. We have a full dining room and people are hungry. Marco, how are we on the sea bass?" "Running low, boss," Marco shouted from the kitchen pass. 86 it, push the salmon," Maya commanded, slipping effortlessly back into the rhythm of the restaurant, but this time from the top. "Sarah, check on table 4. They've been waiting for drinks for 10 minutes. Let's move." The staff scattered, energized, moving faster and happier than they had in years. Maya turned to Elias. "Table for 1, she teased. "Actually," Elias said, his expression turning serious, "I was hoping for a table for 2. I have a business proposition to discuss with you. One that goes beyond just managing this restaurant." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what is that?" "Let's sit," Elias said. "It's going to be a long night." They sat at the best table in the house by the window, overlooking the city lights. As the waiter poured them vintage champagne on the house, of course Maya felt a shift. The revenge against Rick was sweet, but she realized this was just the beginning. Elias swirled his glass. "Rick was a symptom, Maya. The disease is the system. I own 12 other properties in this city, hotels, clubs, resorts. They are all run by men like Rick." He looked at her intensely. "I don't just want you to run, Le Ciel. I want you to help me clean house, everywhere." Maya stared at him. The scope of what he was suggesting was massive. It wasn't just a job, it was a crusade. But before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the white tablecloth. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but you have no idea who Rick Salinger really is. Watch your back, Cinderella. Midnight is coming." Maya frowned, looking up at Elias. "What is it?" he asked, sensing her tension. "I think," Maya said, sliding the phone across the table to him, "that Rick isn't going to go quietly." Elias read the text. His jaw tightened. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by the cold calculation of the billionaire investor. "Good," Elias said darkly. "I was hoping he would try something. I haven't had a real challenge in years." The digital clock on the kitchen wall flickered, 11:30 p.m. The dinner rush had subsided into the languid pace of late-night espressos and digestives. But for Maya, the atmosphere was suffocating. She couldn't shake the text message from the unknown number. "Midnight is coming." She paced the manager's office, checking the security feeds for the 10th time. "You're going to wear a hole in the carpet," Elias said. He was sitting on the leather sofa, reviewing a stack of invoices he had pulled from the files. He looked relaxed, almost too relaxed. "He's planning something. Elias," Maya said, biting her lip. "Rick isn't just a bad manager. He's vindictive. I saw the way he looked at me before he left. It wasn't just anger, it was anticipation." "Let him plan," Elias said, turning a page. "Men like Rick are predictable. They lash out, they break windows, they slash tires. It's annoying, but it's not fatal." "You don't understand," Maya insisted. "Rick has a brother, a detective in the 4th precinct. He used to brag about it whenever we had a rowdy table. He'd say, 'One call and I can have this whole place raided.'" Elias paused. He lowered the papers. "A detective brother. Now that is an interesting variable." Suddenly the lights in the restaurant flickered. Once. Twice. Then the entire building plunged into darkness. Screams erupted from the dining room. The ambient jazz music died, instantly replaced by the sound of shattering glass and confused shouting. "Stay here," Elias commanded, his voice changing instantly from casual to combat-ready. He stood up, moving toward the door. "No," Maya said, grabbing her phone and switching on the flashlight. "It's my restaurant. I'm coming with you." They moved into the kitchen. The emergency lights bathed the stainless steel counters in an eerie red glow. The chefs were standing around, confused, holding their knives. "Nobody move," a voice bellowed from the front of the house. "Police, everybody stay where you are." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She pushed through the swinging doors into the dining room. Blue and red lights flashed through the front windows, illuminating the terrified faces of the guests. 6 uniformed officers had stormed the room, their hands on their holsters. And leading them wasn't a police captain. It was Rick. He was wearing a smirk that cut through the gloom. Beside him stood a man who looked like a bulkier, meaner version of Rick Detective Salinger. "There she is." Rick pointed a shaking finger at Maya. "That's her, the general manager." Detective Salinger stepped forward, his badge gleaming in the strobe lights. "Maya Linwood." "Yes." Maya stepped forward, shielding Elias behind her. "What is the meaning of this? You're terrifying my guests." "We received an anonymous tip about a massive narcotics distribution ring operating out of this kitchen," the detective barked. "And we have reason to believe the manager is holding the supply." "That's insane," Maya shouted. "We serve soufflés, not drugs." "We'll see about that," Rick sneered. "Check the safe, Danny. Check the manager's personal safe." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. The safe. She hadn't changed the combination yet. Rick still knew the code. "You have no warrant," Elias's voice boomed from the shadows. "We have probable cause," the detective shot back. "Move aside." 2 officers shoved Maya against the bar. She watched helpless as Rick and his brother marched into the office. Moments later, they emerged. Rick was holding a clear plastic bag filled with white powder, a massive brick of it. "Bingo!" Rick laughed, holding the bag up for the dining room to see. "Looks like a kilo of cocaine, found right next to Miss Linwood's purse." The guests gasped. Phones were out recording everything. "That's not mine," Maya screamed, struggling against the officer. "He planted it. He was in there alone." "Save it for the judge, sweetheart," Rick said, walking up to her. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale coffee. "I told you. Midnight is coming. You took my job. Now I take your freedom. 10 to 20 years, Maya. Have fun." Detective Salinger pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Maya Linwood, you are under arrest for possession with intent to distribute." Maya looked at Elias. He was standing by a pillar, his face unreadable in the red emergency light. He didn't look scared. He looked disappointed. "Elias," she cried out. "Do something." Rick laughed. "What's the bum going to do? Spare some change?" As the cold steel of the handcuffs touched Maya's wrists, a loud mechanical click echoed through the silent room. Then another. Then another. Suddenly the main lights slammed back on, blindingly bright. The emergency red vanished, replaced by the warm, unforgiving glow of the chandeliers. "What the hell?" Rick blinked, shielding his eyes. "Let her go," Elias said. He walked into the center of the room. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't aggressive. He spoke with the quiet, terrifying authority of a man who owned the ground everyone else was standing on. "Back off, pal," Detective Salinger warned, hand drifting to his gun. "Unless you want to go downtown for obstruction." "I don't think I'll be going anywhere, Detective," Elias said calmly. "And neither will you. But before you finish reading Miss Linwood her rights, I suggest you look at the TV screens behind the bar." Rick frowned. He turned around. Above the bar, the 3 large televisions, usually reserved for sports, flickered to life. But they weren't showing a game. They were showing a high-definition, night vision video feed of the manager's office. The timestamp was from 10 minutes ago. On the screen, the room was dark. The door creaked open. A figure entered, holding a flashlight. It was Rick. The camera clearly showed him pulling a brick of white powder from inside his jacket and shoving it into the open safe. He then wiped the handle with a handkerchief and ran out. The dining room went dead silent. Rick watched the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. That's fake. That's AI. That's not real." "It is very real," Elias said, stepping closer. "You see, Rick, when I bought this building yesterday, I didn't just buy the bricks. I had my security team upgrade the entire surveillance system. Hidden 4K cameras, cloud backup, independent power supply." Elias turned to the detective. "Detective Salinger," Elias said. "You just participated in a raid based on evidence planted by your brother, and you are currently holding an innocent woman in cuffs while millions of dollars of liability hang over your department." The detective looked at the screen, then at his brother. He realized instantly that his career was over. He shoved Rick away from him. "You idiot!" the detective hissed at Rick. "You said the cameras were dead. They were—" Rick shrieked. "I cut the wires myself." "You cut the old wires," Elias corrected. Elias pulled out his phone. "I have the police commissioner on speed dial. We play golf on Sundays. He's listening right now." Elias put the phone on speaker. "Detective Salinger." The commissioner's voice boomed through the phone, shaking with rage. "Uncuff that woman, secure your weapon, and place your brother under arrest. Internal Affairs is already in the parking lot." The color drained from Rick's face so completely he looked like a corpse. The detective's hands trembled. He holstered his gun, unlocked the cuffs from Maya's wrists, and turned slowly to Rick. "Danny." Rick whimpered. "Danny, come on, we're family." "Shut up, Rick," the detective said, his voice flat. He spun his brother around and slammed him against the bar. "You have the right to remain silent." As Rick was read his rights, the restaurant erupted. This time it wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. The guests were cheering. Toby the valet was fist-pumping. Maya rubbed her wrists, staring at Rick as he was dragged out, kicking and screaming, past the very tables he used to terrorize. She turned to Elias. He was fixing his cufflinks, looking like he had just finished a mild business meeting, rather than dismantling a corruption ring. "You knew," Maya said, breathless. "You knew he was coming back." "I suspected," Elias said. "Men like Rick always return to the scene of the crime. I just needed to make sure we caught him doing something that would put him away for good. Firing him wasn't enough. He needed to be neutralized. Maya shook her head, a laugh bubbling up through her tears. You used me as bait. I trusted you to hold the line, Elias corrected gently. And you did. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and solid. Now, Elias said, looking around the chaotic, brilliant restaurant. I believe we have a business empire to build. Are you still interested in the partnership? Maya looked at the staff, who were looking to her for guidance. She looked at the guests, who were now ordering rounds of drinks to celebrate the drama. She looked at Elias. I'm in, she said, but I'm giving myself a raise. Elias grinned. Approved. One later year, the line for the Phoenix wrapped around the block. It was the hottest restaurant in Chicago. The critics raved about the food, but the locals knew the real story. They knew it was owned by the Cinderella of Chicago and the ghost of Wall Street. Maya Linwood stood on the balcony of the private VIP section, looking down at the bustling floor. She wore a tailored cream suit, diamonds glittering at her throat. She wasn't just a manager anymore. She was a partner in Thorne and Linwood Hospitality, a group that now owned 5 of the top venues in the city. Her mother, fully recovered and breathing easily, was sitting at table 1, laughing with Marco the chef. Elias walked up behind Maya, handing her a glass of champagne. Penny for your thoughts, he asked. Maya leaned against the railing. I was just thinking about that night, the night you choked on a piece of steak. Worst dinner of my life, Elias chuckled. Best shift of mine, Maya countered. She turned to face him. You know Rick gets out on parole in 3 years. Elias took a sip of his drink, his eyes scanning the crowd with that familiar, protective intensity. Let him come, Elias said. We'll be waiting. Maya clinked her glass against his. To the twist of fate, she said. To the waitress who saved the world, he replied. They looked out over their kingdom, ready for whatever course came next. And that is the incredible story of how one act of kindness changed Maya's life forever. She went from clearing tables to owning the building, proving that sometimes the person you help today could be the one who saves you tomorrow. Rick learned the hard way that treating people like trash eventually leaves you in the dumpster, while Maya proved that integrity is the most valuable currency of all. What would you have done if you were in Maya's shoes? Would you have helped Elias or followed the rules? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma justice and billionaire romance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy drama coming next week about a nanny and a secret prince, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.